Beware of the fairness doctrine. The Biden administration is trapped in a scarcity spiral. I want to share with you why and my take on what's going on so that you can learn and enjoy a life of abundance instead of a scarcity type of a mindset. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I'm very passionate about educating people on the merits of taking ownership of having an abundant life, because I think we all want abundance for those that we care about. And so I have written several books about these topics. I have a book called Entitlement Abolition: How to Lead Your Family or Your Employees, anybody you care about, from me to we. Together we're better. And so as I observe what's going on in America right now, I'm quite concerned that the Biden administration is sort of caught in what we call a scarcity spiral, and I don't even think they're aware of it, because I think Joe Biden got caught up in a lot of the movements that were going on during the campaigns and all of those who were having an influence on what he should say in order to get elected. And I think he's trapped a little bit right now. So let me explain what I'm talking about. And I'm going to attribute here Mr. Dan Sullivan. He's a very good friend of mine. He's a strategic coach. He has coached over 6,000 of the world's top entrepreneurs. Dan Sullivan lives in Toronto, Canada, and also Chicago, Illinois. I met him about 25 years ago. And what a blessing he has been in my life. I belong to his strategic coach mastermind groups, and he invited me to be part of his top 70. And I got to rub shoulders with people like Steve Forbes and Joe Polish, Arianna Huffington of the Huffington Post, many incredible people that we get together. And instead of trying to be the smartest person in the room, we are all just interested in being in a room where everybody's trying to get smarter. And so we check our egos at the door. Now, Dan Sullivan has authored many books, and so I attribute this concept to him. He wrote a white paper on what he called the fairness doctrine and the difference between scarcity and abundance. And I have expanded upon this topic many times. But I'm going to refer to what he showed as a difference between these two mentalities here. So one has to do with resentfulness. The other one has to do with resourcefulness. And so if you can't tell, this is the scarcity mindset, this is the abundant mindset. So the behavior of these people that get caught in this spiral is growing personal unhappiness and dissatisfaction with daily life on a planet where scarce necessities are increasingly controlled by a few. That's what they worry about all the time, okay? Whereas over here, increased excitement, skill, and achievement based upon unpredictable combining of individual capabilities and creating greater resources and opportunities for many other people. It's a growth mindset, okay? This one over here begins with envy, and then guilt, and then indignation. Over here, it begins with gratitude, and then that fosters creativity and cooperation. And I'm going to talk about the big difference here of cooperation, because capitalism was named it by its enemies. Did you know that? In other words, Karl Marx was an enemy. He said, oh, you're trying to capitalize on people's wants and needs. And so he said, let's call it capitalism. Now, really, it should have been called cooperation. So let's go back a couple of thousand years ago to the time of Christ, okay? Now, let's say at the time of Christ, you and I had an agreement on making the clothing. They were called tunics, okay? So here's the deal. I'll make the tunics this year. You make the tunics next year. But pretty soon, you're pretty good at making clothes and I'm not. I'd rather be out fishing. So you make the clothes and I'll catch the fish and we'll trade. And then Joe over here, he likes to be in the dirt. He doesn't like to be on the water. He likes to grow corn. So he grows corn, we buy his corn or we trade, And you make clothes because you make them faster, cheaper, better. And I'm okay with you making a profit because it would cost me more in time and effort and money to do that myself. And I'll catch the fish and I'll fillet them and have them all ready for you. We're cooperating. But enemies of that called it capitalism. Oh, you're capitalizing on people's needs and wants. No, you're cooperating. If you leave it alone, the prices, people will come in and compete. And so that's called a free market, laissez-faire, French for leave it alone. So this is where you learn to cooperate. But many times people get jealous and they say, oh, we got to start regulating this. We've got to redistribute this. That's unfair. You didn't build that. We built it because we bought all those computers from you. It's like, what? What do you mean? I am thrilled to be able to buy computers now for $700. My first computer cost $11,000 in the 1970s. It had 2 floppy drives. Yeah, $11,000 in 1970. My heavens, in today's dollars, that'd be over $100,000 for a computer. And my current computer, I remember when I bought my first computer with a 10 megabyte hard drive. The salesperson said, this is all you will ever need. Yeah. You talk about how the microchip has doubled in its capacity every 18 months and the cost has cut in half. And so because we combine technology, when Jobs came out with an iPad, the mini iPad, I was able to take that technology and buy them in bulk. I bought hundreds of mini iPads. And I put 154 videos that averaged 42 minutes on an iPad so that people at their fingertips could get educated on one iPad by clicking on all those videos. So I used my wisdom and knowledge, my education, and I used his iPad, and I was grateful for that, but we combined that technology together so that they had the equivalent of 154 videos at their fingertips. That's called cooperation. Does that make sense? Well, because people get caught up in a scarcity mindset, they start out with this zero-sum mentality. They think the world is getting depleted and everything's unfair. That's unfair. You're making a profit. That is not fair. We need to redistribute this wealth. And you can get really caught up in this fairness doctrine. Whereas over here in the abundance neighborhood, you have exponential growth, compounding. You have ingenuity. You have big opportunities. And so more and more jobs are created. People are cooperating and you have a lot of opportunities. But if all of a sudden you start saying, well, that's unfair. They got to succeed. I didn't. Or sometimes my wife and I, we work out 3 days a week for an hour with a trainer. We try to watch really close on what we eat and everything. And we're not in perfect health, but we do spend a lot of time trying to exercise to stay in motion and to stay healthy. And yet I've heard some people say, well, that's unfair. There's people that I don't know what it is, but they are upset that life is unfair. And so they want me to pay for their poor choices with bad habits. And this is where we get into a lot of turmoil in America. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have affordable health care for everybody. But when you start demanding that the people who are really trying hard to be healthy have to pay for the people who choose horrible habits and are unhealthy, that's what causes turmoil. And so this is what goes on in America when we start preaching fairness. We got to be fair, thinking that, no, that means we've got to be equal to everybody. So before I show you the scarcity spiral, in summary again, compared to the abundance spiral, which is where I think you would like to be, if you like this thus far and you know somebody who ought to watch this episode, share, click like, subscribe to Three Dimensional Wealth YouTube channel. I post an in-depth video almost on a daily basis covering a specific topic that people are concerned about right now. And at the end, I'm going to show you how you can get a free copy of my book called Entitlement Abolition, where I talk about this in depth. So Dan Sullivan, he created an illustration like this, and he called this the abundance spiral progression. So before I show you this one, let's review the scarcity spiral, because I'm noticing that whether Joe Biden realized it or not, he's gotten caught in this trying to satisfy people who said, we want this. And he said, okay, if you'll vote for me, I'll do that. And then when he only forgives $10,000 of student loan debt instead of $50,000, they get all up in arms. He's got himself painted into a corner. And it's really the scarcity spiral that he's got himself into, where it started out with people, they envy others, they feel guilty that other people are benefiting and they're not, or what have you, and they want to make things fair. They want to level the playing field. And so they have indignation, anger that some people's results and advantages are better than others. Well, yeah, but there's better ways than to always take from those who worked really hard and give it to the ones who were not willing to work that hard for it. Unfairness, believing that everybody's results and advantages must be made equal or equitable. And I have another episode where I talk about the difference between equity and equality. Depletion, believing that the resources of the world are being used by an unfair minority. And believing that one's gain comes at the expense of someone else's loss. You know, sometimes I just have to explain it this way. I'll be in front of an audience and I'll go, and then I'll say, did anybody just get bugged that I took an extra breath of air out of this room? They go, no. Yeah, there's plenty. But sometimes we get in this scarcity mindset that if you are happy or you are successful, that angers people because you have more than your fair share of happiness. And I feel so bad for those people. They're caught in a scarcity mindset. Do you know people like that? So I invite you, as Dan Sullivan does, to be part of the abundance spiral, the abundance neighborhood. It starts out with gratitude, a profound attitude of gratitude. And then you start using creativity and you start to cooperate with other people. And this is what fosters all kinds of incredible abundance, and abundance breeds abundance. And then you'll have exponential growth. When Steve Jobs came out with the iPad mini and I put my videos on, it helped everybody, including our clients. Ingenuity and opportunity. You have way more opportunities than you have the capability to seize. That's a nice problem. You know what I want for my children and grandchildren? Do you know what I want for you? The rest of your life, I want you to have way more opportunities than you have the capability to seize. That's a nice problem. Most people, they have way more capability than they have opportunities. How sad is that? When you have more opportunities than you have capability, I teach in my book how to filter which opportunities to seize, which ones to delegate to somebody else, and which ones to walk away from. Most people do not understand or have that problem. When you start to get into this abundance spiral, everybody is happy. You brighten the room when you enter it. Unfortunately, these people brighten the room when they leave it, if you know what I'm talking about. When I teach this to my grandkids, I say, do you want to be a fountain in a group of people, or do you want to be a drain? Is a higher power up there looking down saying, come on, are you with me or are you against me? Are you abundant-minded or scarcity-minded? This is so powerful, and I've realized that in life, we sometimes get caught in a trap. And those that we care about are trying to achieve abundance, but they get caught in that scarcity spiral. And here's all this abundance out here, and they can't even reach it. My goal for you is to be able to break free from that trap, and everybody can start partaking of the fruit of abundance, and then that abundance will breed more abundance. I love this country so much. I hate to see us get caught in the scarcity spiral, trying to preach fairness, thinking that by trying to level the playing field, that we're going to somehow magically make everything come equal, when actually it's equal opportunities, not equal distribution, that is the key. So search that episode on this channel, and let me show you how you can get a copy of my book, Entitlement Abolition. So I have a free gift for you, the Entitlement Abolition book, 200 pages. It has 12 chapters. The first 4 talk about the problem, but the last 8 talk about the solution. And I'm going to show you how you can claim your free copy of this book. So if you go to entitlementabolitionbook.com, entitlementabolitionbook.com, you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I will send out a copy of this book to you absolutely free. There's also a master class in there where I spend 18 hours teaching you all the ins and outs of how we've been able to do this for thousands of families. Here's to your brighter future.